Sometimes saving a life costs you everything. Joy learned this the hard way when she pulled a drowning boy from the Lagos lagoon, only to be arrested weeks later for stealing 50 million naira from his family. But the real thief was someone she never suspected. The afternoon sun beat down on 3rd Mainland Bridge as Joy balanced a tray of bottled water on her head, weaving through the sluggish traffic. At 22, she'd been doing this for 5 years, ever since the orphanage turned her out at 17 with nothing but prayers and good wishes. The traffic was her office, the lagoon breeze her air conditioning, and the impatient honks of Lagos drivers her daily soundtrack. She was approaching a black Range Rover when she heard the screech of tires. Joy spun around just in time to see a silver SUV swerve violently. Its driver slumped over the wheel. The vehicle crashed through the bridge railing and plunged toward the water below. Without thinking, Joy dropped her tray and ran. Bottles shattered on the asphalt behind her as she kicked off her slippers and dove over the broken railing. The cold water of the lagoon swallowed her whole. When she surfaced, gasping, she saw the SUV sinking fast. Through the rear window, she spotted a boy, maybe 16, unconscious and strapped in his seatbelt. His eyes were closed, his body limp. Joy took a deep breath and dove. The water was murky and dark. Her lungs screamed for air as she yanked at the door handle. It wouldn't budge. She surfaced, gulped air, and dove again. This time she smashed her elbow against the window until it cracked. Blood clouded the water, but she didn't stop. On her 3rd try, the window shattered. Joy unclipped the boy's seatbelt and dragged him out, kicking toward the surface with everything she had. When they broke through, she heard sirens wailing on the bridge above. Boat operators were already speeding toward them. She held the boy's head above water, her arms trembling with exhaustion. "Please breathe," she whispered. "Please." The boy coughed, water spilling from his lips. His eyes fluttered open for just a moment before closing again. Joy had never been so relieved in her life. Emergency responders pulled them from the water. Joy watched as they worked on the boy, pumping his chest, checking his vitals. 2 other people, a man and a woman in expensive clothes, were being rescued from the front of the vehicle. The woman was hysterical, screaming her son's name. "Daniel! Daniel!" A paramedic wrapped a blanket around Joy's shoulders. "You saved that boy's life," he said quietly. "The parents were wearing seatbelts, but if you hadn't pulled him out when you did." Joy nodded, too exhausted to speak. She watched as they loaded the family into an ambulance. The boy, Daniel, was breathing on his own now. That was all that mattered. She was about to slip away into the crowd when the man from the SUV, now conscious and wrapped in a blanket, spotted her. He grabbed a paramedic's arm and pointed in her direction. "That girl. Don't let her leave. She saved my son." Joy froze as all eyes turned to her. For the first time in her life, she didn't know whether to run or stay. But something in the man's eyes, gratitude, desperation, relief, kept her rooted to the spot. What she didn't know was that diving into that lagoon would change her life forever. And not all changes are blessings. 3 days later, Joy stood outside a mansion in Ikoyi, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake by agreeing to come. The gates alone were bigger than the entire building where she rented a room in Mushin. A gateman in a crisp uniform had escorted her inside, eyeing her faded dress with barely concealed suspicion. The man who'd called himself Richard Adeyemi met her in a sitting room so large it could fit 10 of her rooms. He looked different now. Clean, powerful, commanding. This was no ordinary man. This was one of Nigeria's billionaire industrialists, the kind of person Joy only saw on magazine covers. "Joy," he said warmly, taking her hand. "Thank you for coming. I wanted to thank you properly for saving Daniel's life." A woman appeared at the top of the staircase. She was stunning, light-skinned, elegant, dripping in gold jewelry. But her smile didn't quite reach her eyes as she descended. "This is my wife, Patricia," Richard said. "Thank you for what you did," Patricia said, her voice polite but flat. She looked at Joy the way someone might look at an insect they're deciding whether to crush. Joy nodded, suddenly very aware of her cheap sandals and the way her dress had been washed so many times the color had faded. Richard pulled out an envelope. "I want to give you this. It's not nearly enough, but—" "I can't accept money, sir," Joy said quickly. "I only did what anyone would do." Richard stared at her, surprised. Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly, as if Joy had said something in a foreign language. "Anyone would do it," Richard repeated. "Joy, dozens of people watched our car go into that water. You were the only one who jumped in." I couldn't watch someone die, sir." Something shifted in Richard's expression. He glanced at his wife, then back at Joy. "Then let me offer you something else. My son is recovering from the trauma of the accident. He's withdrawn, quiet. He needs someone his own age around, someone genuine. Would you consider working as his personal assistant? Helping him with errands, keeping him company as he recovers?" Joy's heart hammered. "A job. A real job. Sir, I don't know anything about being an assistant." "You don't need to know anything except how to be yourself," Richard said. "Daniel needs that right now. We'll provide accommodation here, meals, and a salary of 150,000 naira monthly." Joy's knees nearly buckled. 150,000 naira. She currently made about 40,000 on a good month selling water in traffic. "I would be honored, sir," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. Patricia's smile tightened. "How wonderful. Welcome to our home, Joy." But there was something in the way Patricia said her name, like it tasted bitter on her tongue, that sent a chill down Joy's spine. Still, she pushed the feeling aside. This was an opportunity she'd never dreamed of. She couldn't let paranoia ruin it. What Joy didn't see was the way Patricia's eyes followed her as Richard led her upstairs to meet Daniel. What she didn't hear was Patricia's phone call later that evening to her brother. "Don't worry," Patricia said coldly into the phone. "I'll handle the street girl. She won't be here long." Joy's new room in the boys' quarter was small but perfect. Her own bed, her own bathroom, her own space. She'd never had her own bathroom before. That first night, she cried herself to sleep from sheer gratitude. Daniel was different from what she expected. 16 years old, quiet, intelligent, with his father's kind eyes but his mother's sharp features. The accident had left him with nightmares and a fear of cars that made his hands shake whenever he had to get in one. "I remember the water," he told Joy one afternoon as she helped him with his mathematics homework. "I remember thinking I was going to die. Then I saw you through the window, and I thought you were an angel." Joy laughed. "Angels don't sell pure water in traffic." "Maybe they do in Lagos," Daniel said with a small smile. It was the first time she'd seen him smile since she arrived. Over the weeks, they formed an unexpected friendship. Joy helped him with homework and accompanied him to physiotherapy sessions. She told him stories about growing up in the orphanage, about the kindness of strangers and the cruelty of circumstance. Daniel, in turn, shared his own loneliness, the pressure of being an heir, the expectations, the isolation of wealth. The household staff warmed to her quickly. Mom Ngozi, the cook, a woman as round as she was kind, treated Joy like a daughter. She'd slip her extra food and advice in equal measure. "Just stay humble and work hard," Mom Ngozi said one evening. "Don't give anybody reason to say bad things about you." Uncle Samuel, the gateman who'd worked for the family for 15 years, was quieter but equally kind. He reminded Joy of the security guard at the orphanage who used to sneak her sweets on her birthday. But Patricia remained a cold presence in the house. She barely spoke to Joy, acknowledging her only when absolutely necessary. Joy would catch her watching sometimes, not with curiosity, but with something that looked like calculation. Like she was solving a problem she didn't like the answer to. "Don't mind, madam," Mom Ngozi whispered one day when Joy mentioned it. "Some people don't like change. Just do your work well." Joy tried. She worked harder than she'd ever worked, wanting to prove she deserved to be there. She organized Daniel's schedule, made sure he took his medications, encouraged him when the nightmares got bad. She never asked for more than she was given. She never overstepped. But kindness and hard work, Joy would soon learn, were not always enough to protect you from those who'd already decided you didn't belong. One evening, as Joy passed the master bedroom, she heard Patricia's voice, low and angry. "She's getting too comfortable, Richard. Too close to Daniel." "She's good for him," Richard's voice responded. "Can't you see how much he's improved? She's a nobody from the streets. What do we really know about her?" Joy hurried past before she could hear Richard's response. But that night, lying in her small room, she couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was brewing in the house. She just didn't know how dark things were about to get. Daniel's 17th birthday arrived with all the extravagance Lagos money could buy. The Adeyemi mansion transformed into a palace of lights, flowers, and luxury. Marquees covered the lawn, caterers rushed about with trays of small chops and champagne, and a DJ tested his equipment by the pool. Richard had asked Joy to help coordinate the younger guest section, trusting her judgment about what teenagers might actually enjoy. Joy threw herself into the task, grateful for the distraction from Patricia's increasingly cold stares. "You've done an amazing job," Richard told her the afternoon before the party, surveying the setup. "Thank you, Joy." "It's nothing, sir. I'm happy to help." "You know," Richard said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking about your future. You're too bright to just be an assistant forever. Have you ever thought about going to university?" Joy's throat tightened. "I wanted to, sir. But after the orphanage, there was no money for jam, no money for—" "What if I sponsored you?" Richard interrupted. "University of Lagos. Full scholarship. What would you study?" Joy couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face as the impossible dream suddenly became possible. I always wanted to study social work, sir. To help children like me." Richard smiled. "Then that's what you'll do. After Daniel's birthday, we'll start the application process." Joy wanted to hug him but settled for a trembling, "Thank you, sir," that couldn't possibly convey what she was feeling. The party that evening was spectacular. Lagos elite filled the mansion. Politicians, businessmen, society women dripping in diamonds. Joy stayed in the background, making sure the younger guests were entertained, fixing small problems before they became big ones. But Daniel found her around 9 p.m., pulling her toward the main party. "You're not hiding all night. Come on." "Daniel, I'm working. It's my birthday. Humor me." So Joy joined the festivities, feeling completely out of place in her simple dress among women in designer labels. But Daniel stayed by her side, introducing her to his friends, making sure she felt included. For a few hours, Joy forgot about being the help and just enjoyed being 17. No, 22, and alive. She didn't notice Patricia watching from across the lawn, her expression unreadable. Later that night, after the guests had left and the staff had begun cleaning up, Richard called Joy to his study. It was the first time she'd been in that room, all leather and dark wood and the smell of expensive cigars. "Joy, I meant what I said earlier," Richard began. "About university. You saved my son's life. You've been good for this family. Let me do this for you." Joy nodded, too emotional to trust her voice. "One more thing," Richard said, moving toward a painting on the wall. He swung it aside, revealing a safe behind it. "I keep important documents in here, property deeds, contracts, cash for business transactions. I'm telling you this because I trust you. If anything ever happens to me, Daniel knows the combination. Take care of him, Joy." "Of course, sir. Always." Walking back to her room that night, Joy felt like she was floating. University. A real education. A future. Everything was finally falling into place. She didn't see Patricia standing in the shadows of the upstairs hallway, watching her with eyes that gleamed with something dangerous. 2 days later, Joy's perfect new life would shatter into a million pieces. And she would learn that in Patricia's world, trust was just another weapon to be used against you. The scream came at 7 a.m. Joy was helping Daniel prepare for school when Patricia's voice shattered the morning peace. Richard! Richard, come here now. They rushed downstairs to find Patricia in the living room, 2 police officers standing beside her. Richard emerged from his study, confusion written across his face. Patricia, what's going on? The safe, Patricia said, her voice shaking with what sounded like fury and tears. 50 million naira is missing. The money for the Abuja contract, it's gone. Joy's stomach dropped. The safe. The one Richard had shown her just 2 nights ago. That's impossible, Richard said, already moving toward his study. Nobody knows. Somebody knew, Patricia cut him off. She turned to look directly at Joy. Your assistant was in that room 2 nights ago. You showed her the safe yourself. Patricia, Joy wouldn't. Wouldn't she? Patricia's eyes were cold. We know nothing about this girl except that she came from the streets. You brought a stranger into our home, showed her where you keep millions, and now the money is gone. Mrs. Adeyemi, I swear I didn't, Joy started, but Patricia held up a hand. Officers, I want to press charges. I want this girl investigated immediately. One of the policemen, a heavy-set man with a sergeant's stripes, turned to Joy. Miss, we need to ask you some questions. I didn't take anything, Joy said, her voice rising with panic. I've never even touched that safe. Then you won't mind if we search your room? The other officer asked. Daniel stepped forward. This is ridiculous. Joy would never steal from us. She saved my life. Daniel, stay out of this, Patricia snapped. You're too young to understand. They searched Joy's room while she stood in the hallway, trembling. They found nothing, of course, because there was nothing to find. But Patricia wasn't finished. Show them the CCTV footage, she told Richard coldly. Richard's face went pale. Patricia, what footage? The hallway cameras. I checked them this morning when I discovered the theft. They gathered in Richard's study where he pulled up the security system on his computer. Joy watched as the screen showed her walking down the hallway toward Richard's study at 11:47 p.m., 2 nights ago, the night of Daniel's birthday party. That was after I left your study, sir, Joy said desperately. I was going to the kitchen for water. I never went into. The timestamp shows you in this area for 17 minutes, the sergeant interrupted. What were you doing for 17 minutes if you were just getting water? I don't know. Maybe I was in the kitchen longer than I thought. I was tired from the party. Or maybe you were opening a safe, Patricia said softly, dangerously. I don't even know the combination. Joy cried. You were in the room when my husband opened it, Patricia countered. Don't tell me you didn't watch. Joy turned to Richard, pleading. Sir, you know me. You know I would never. But Richard's face was conflicted, uncertain. He looked between his wife and the girl who'd saved his son, and Joy saw the exact moment he chose to believe his wife. I think we should let the police handle this, Richard said quietly. The words hit Joy like a physical blow. The sergeant moved toward her, pulling out handcuffs. No, Daniel shouted, grabbing Joy's arm. Dad, this is wrong. Joy didn't do this. Daniel, let go, Patricia commanded. Miss Joy, the sergeant said, not unkindly, you need to come with us for questioning. As the cold metal closed around her wrists, Joy looked at Richard one last time. I saved your son, she whispered. I saved him. But Richard looked away. They led Joy out through the servants' entrance. Patricia's final humiliation. Mom Ngozi was crying in the kitchen. Uncle Samuel stood by the gate, his face etched with disbelief and sorrow. As the police car pulled away from the mansion, Joy caught a glimpse of Patricia in the window. And for just a second, before the older woman's face shifted back to righteous anger, Joy could have sworn she saw something else. Satisfaction. The holding cell smelled like urine and despair. Joy sat on the concrete bench, still wearing the dress she'd put on that morning, A lifetime ago when she'd still believed in happy endings. Other women occupied the cell with her, but Joy barely saw them. She was trapped in an endless loop of the morning's events, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so fast. The interrogation had been brutal. The same questions over and over. Where is the money? Who are you working with? How did you plan this? No matter how many times Joy insisted she was innocent, they treated her like a liar. A thief. A con artist who'd wormed her way into a wealthy family's trust just to rob them. By evening, the news had spread. Another woman in the cell recognized her. You be that girl. The one-way thief from the rich people. She spat at Joy's feet. Ungrateful thing. They save you from selling pure water, and this is how you repay them. Joy closed her eyes, fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd saved them, not the other way around. But nobody cared about that anymore. The story spreading through Lagos was juicier. Poor girl betrays wealthy benefactors. She thought about the orphanage, about all the times she told younger children that good things happen to good people if they just worked hard and stayed honest. What a lie that had been. She'd done everything right, and she was still here, locked up like a criminal. Meanwhile, at the Adeyemi mansion, another battle was raging. She's innocent, Daniel shouted at his mother. He'd been shouting for hours, but Patricia's expression never changed. Cool, controlled, unmovable. You're being naive, Daniel, Patricia said calmly, examining her manicured nails. That girl saw an opportunity and she took it. People like her always do. People like her? You mean poor people? You mean orphans? I mean people with nothing to lose. She had everything to lose. Daniel's voice cracked. She had a job, a home. Dad was going to send her to university. Exactly. And 50 million naira is much better than a university education, isn't it? Patricia's smile was thin. Daniel, you're 17. You don't understand how the world works yet. I understand that you never wanted her here. I understand that you've hated her from the beginning. Patricia's eyes flashed. I protected this family. That's what mothers do. Richard entered the room, exhausted. The police had just left after taking his official statement. Daniel, go to your room. Dad, please. Now, Daniel. After their son left, Richard turned to his wife. Patricia, what if she's telling the truth? What if we've made a mistake? We haven't, Patricia said firmly. The evidence is clear. She was near the safe that night. She had opportunity. And now the money is gone. But no motive. Why would she risk everything for? Because 50 million naira is life-changing money for someone like her, Patricia interrupted. Richard, I know you want to believe the best in people. It's one of the things I love about you. But sometimes people aren't what they seem. Richard rubbed his temples. I keep thinking about how she saved Daniel. She risked her life. And we gave her a job, a home, and our trust. She repaid us by stealing. Patricia moved closer to her husband, softening her voice. I know this is hard. But we have to let the law take its course. If she's innocent, the investigation will prove it. But Patricia knew no investigation would prove Joy innocent. She'd made sure of that. Back in the holding cell, Joy had stopped crying. There were no tears left. She lay on the cold bench and stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out what she'd missed. There had to be something, some clue, some moment when she could have seen this coming. Patricia's cold stares. Her resistance to Joy being hired. The way she'd always made Joy feel like an intruder. But hating someone and framing them for theft were very different things. Why would Patricia go to such lengths? What did she gain from destroying Joy? The answer, Joy would eventually learn, had nothing to do with her at all. It had everything to do with money, family, and the lengths a desperate woman would go to protect secrets. But right now, sitting in a cell facing years in prison for a crime she didn't commit, Joy had never felt more alone. The girl who'd once jumped into a lagoon to save a stranger now wondered if anyone would jump in to save her. Uncle Samuel arrived at the police station the next morning carrying a food flask and a heavy heart. The officer at the desk tried to turn him away. Visiting hours hadn't started, but Samuel slipped him 2,000 naira and was let through. Joy looked worse than he'd expected. Her eyes were hollow, her spirit broken. She barely touched the jollof rice and chicken Mom and Ngozi had prepared. "You have to eat," Samuel urged gently. "Keep your strength." "For what?" Joy's voice was empty. "Uncle Samuel, they think I'm a thief. The whole of Lagos thinks I'm a thief." Samuel looked around carefully, then leaned closer. "I don't believe it. Mom and Ngozi doesn't believe it. And that boy Daniel, he's been crying since yesterday." "It doesn't matter what you believe. The evidence." "The evidence is wrong," Samuel interrupted firmly. "Joy, I've worked in that house for 15 years. I know things. I see things." He paused. "Madam Patricia, she's been acting strange for weeks. Always on the phone with her brother, always stressed about money." Joy looked up for the first time. "Money? But they're billionaires. Mr. Richard is a billionaire. Madam Patricia's family money is different. Her brother has a business that's been failing. I heard her arguing with him on the phone about loans." Samuel's voice dropped to a whisper. "And 3 days before the birthday party, I saw her standing in front of the safe. Just standing there, staring at it. But the footage shows me. Footage can be edited, my dear. Footage can lie." Samuel gripped her hand. "Listen to me. I'm going to ask questions. Quietly. Carefully. Don't lose hope." After Samuel left, Joy sat in her cell turning over his words. Could Patricia have done this? Could she have stolen her own family's money and blamed Joy? It seemed impossible, but then again, everything about the last 24 hours seemed impossible. Miles away in Lekki, a young lawyer named Michael was having his morning coffee when he saw the news headline on his phone. "Orphan arrested for stealing 50 million Nigerian nairas from billionaire family she saved." Michael frowned. He'd been at Daniel's birthday party. His cousin worked with Richard Adeyemi. He remembered meeting Joy briefly, remembered how natural and kind she'd seemed, how uncomfortable she'd looked among all the wealth. This didn't make sense. He pulled up more articles, read the details. Something about the story bothered him. If Joy had stolen 50 million naira, where was it? The police hadn't found the money. She hadn't run. She hadn't tried to hide. What kind of thief commits the perfect crime and then just stays around to get caught? Michael made a decision. He grabbed his car keys and headed to the police station. Joy was shocked when the guard told her she had another visitor. Even more shocked when she saw who it was. The young man in the nice suit from the party, the one who'd smiled at her when she'd fumbled with a serving tray. "Miss Joy, I'm Michael Okonkwo. I'm a lawyer," he said, settling into the plastic chair across from her. "I'd like to represent you." I can't pay you. I'm not asking for payment. I'm offering pro bono representation because something about this case doesn't sit right with me." Michael pulled out a notepad. "Tell me everything. From the beginning. Don't leave anything out." For the first time since her arrest, Joy felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. She told him everything. The rescue, the job, Patricia's coldness, Richard showing her the safe, the birthday party, the arrest. Michael listened carefully, taking notes, asking questions. "The CCTV footage," he said finally. "Have you seen it yourself?" "No. Just what the police told me. I'm going to need to see that footage. And I'm going to need to talk to the household staff." Michael looked at her seriously. "Joy, if you're innocent, and I believe you are, then someone else took that money. And in my experience, when 50 million naira goes missing, you follow the money. Who needed it most?" Joy thought about Samuel's words. Patricia's strange behavior. The phone calls about money. "I think I might know where to start looking," she said slowly. Michael smiled. Good. Then let's prove your innocence. But as Joy would soon discover, proving innocence was much harder than establishing guilt. And Patricia Adeyemi had spent weeks making sure every piece of evidence pointed in only one direction, away from herself. The real battle was just beginning. Michael worked fast. Within 2 days, he'd filed motions, challenged the evidence, and secured a court date for bail. He also did something the police hadn't bothered to do. He investigated. Uncle Samuel became his inside man at the Adeyemi mansion. The old gateman had worked in enough wealthy homes to know where secrets were hidden. He started with Patricia's phone records, which he accessed through a friend who worked at the telecom company. The call logs told an interesting story. 47 calls to the same number in the week before the theft. The number belonged to Patricia's brother, James. Samuel dug deeper and discovered James owned a manufacturing company that was drowning in debt. Nearly 200 million naira owed to various creditors. She needed the money for her brother, Samuel told Michael during a secret meeting at a roadside buka. I'm sure of it. Can you prove it? Not yet. But I'm working on something else. Samuel pulled out his phone, showing Michael photos he'd taken of the mansion's CCTV monitor. Look at the timestamps on the footage they showed the police. 11:47 to 12:04 p.m. But look at this. He swiped to another photo. The original system log shows a gap. Footage from 11:55 to 12:15 is missing completely. Michael leaned forward. They edited it. Someone did. And I know who has access to the security system controls. Madam Patricia and Mr. Richard. That's it. We need the original footage. Working on it, Samuel promised. Inside the mansion, Daniel was conducting his own investigation. His mother had forbidden him from visiting Joy or talking about the case, but Daniel wasn't good at following rules anymore. Not when an innocent person was suffering. He knew his mother's laptop password. She'd used his birthday for everything since he was born. Late one night, while his parents slept, Daniel crept into his mother's study and opened her computer. What he found in her email drafts made his blood run cold. Messages to her brother James. Never sent but saved. Don't worry. I'll handle it. Nobody will ever suspect. The girl is perfect. Poor. Desperate. No family. Who will believe her? I showed her the safe like an idiot. This will be easier than I thought. Daniel's hands shook as he took screenshots, emailing them to himself. Then he did something he'd learned from a YouTube video. He accessed the mansion's backup security server, the one that automatically saved footage to the cloud before local files could be edited or deleted. It took him 3 hours to find the right night, the right camera angle. But when he did, he saw everything. 11:47 p.m. Joy walking down the hallway toward the kitchen, just as she'd said. 11:52 p.m. Joy returning with a glass of water, walking back toward her room. 11:58 p.m. Patricia emerging from the master bedroom, looking around carefully before approaching Richard's study. 12:03 p.m. Patricia entering the study. 12:14 p.m. Patricia leaving the study, carrying a leather bag that looked heavy. Daniel watched the footage 5 times, each viewing making him sicker. His own mother. His own mother had done this. He wanted to confront her immediately, but something made him hesitate. This was his family. His mother. If he exposed her, what would happen? Would his father ever forgive her? Would their family survive? But then he thought about Joy, sitting in a cell for a crime she didn't commit. He thought about how she'd saved his life, how she'd been kind to him when she had no reason to be, how she'd never asked for anything except the chance to be treated with dignity. Daniel made his choice. He downloaded the footage and sent it to Michael's email address. He'd gotten the contact information from Uncle Samuel. The next morning, Mom Ngozi finally broke her silence. She'd been struggling with her conscience for days, terrified of losing her job but unable to watch an innocent girl suffer. She called Michael and told him what she'd seen. Patricia near the safe on the night of the theft, Patricia threatening her to stay quiet, Patricia's increasingly erratic behavior. She told me if I said anything, she'd make sure I never worked in Lagos again, Mom Ngozi said, crying. But I can't sleep. That girl did nothing wrong. Michael now had testimony, email evidence, and video proof. It was time to act. He requested an emergency meeting at the Adeyemi mansion, insisting that Richard, Patricia, and the police all be present. Richard, exhausted by the whole affair and starting to have serious doubts, agreed. Joy was released on bail and brought to the meeting, her first time back at the mansion since her arrest. She looked thin, tired, but her eyes burned with something new. Not hope, exactly, but determination. Patricia was calm when she arrived, confident in her carefully constructed lies. She didn't know that her son had betrayed her to save someone innocent. She didn't know that her secrets were about to explode in her face. Michael set up his laptop in Richard's study, the same room where the theft had allegedly occurred. Before we begin, Richard said heavily, I want to say that if we've made a mistake. You have, Michael interrupted. And I'm about to prove it. He pressed play on the unedited security footage. The room fell silent as they watched Patricia's late-night visit to the safe, watched her take the money, watched her carefully stage the scene. Richard's face went from confusion to shock to devastation. Patricia, what is this? Patricia had gone white. That's not real. It's been doctored. Like the footage you showed the police was doctored? Michael asked coldly. He pulled up the email drafts, the phone records, the testimony from Mom Ngozi. Piece by piece, he dismantled Patricia's lies until there was nowhere left to hide. The question now was, would Patricia finally tell the truth? The silence in Richard's study was deafening. All eyes turned to Patricia, who stood frozen, her face a mask of shock that was slowly crumbling into something else. Panic, fear, calculation. Say something, Richard whispered. His voice was broken. Tell me this isn't real. Patricia's mouth opened, closed. For a long moment, she looked like she might continue denying everything. But then her eyes landed on Daniel, standing in the doorway with tears streaming down his face, and something inside her broke. I did it, she said quietly. The words fell like stones into still water. I took the money. I framed Joy. Joy's knees buckled. Michael caught her arm, steadying her. After days of maintaining her innocence, hearing the confession felt surreal. Why? Richard's voice was barely audible. Patricia laughed bitterly. Why? Because my brother was about to lose everything. Because our family name was about to be destroyed by bankruptcy and scandal. Because I needed that money and you. She turned to Richard with sudden fury. You were too busy playing savior to some street girl to notice your own wife's family was drowning. You could have asked me, Richard said, his voice breaking. You're my wife. If James needed help. And have you lord it over us forever? Have you remind me every day that my family needed your money? Patricia shook her head. The Adeyemis aren't the only important family in Nigeria, Richard. My family built this country too. I wasn't going to beg. So you stole instead, Daniel said from the doorway, his voice thick with disgust. And you let Joy suffer for it. Patricia's gaze snapped to her son. You gave them the footage. You betrayed your own mother. You betrayed everyone, Daniel shot back. You betrayed Dad. You betrayed our family. And you destroyed an innocent person because she was poor and you thought nobody would care. Nobody should have cared. Patricia's composure finally shattered completely. She was nothing. A nobody. A water seller who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Why should she get to live in our house, benefit from our generosity, when people like her usually? Usually what? Joy spoke for the first time, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Usually stay in our place? Usually remain invisible? Usually don't matter? Patricia said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. The police sergeant stepped forward. Mrs. Adeyemi, I need you to come with me. Wait, Richard said. He looked at his wife of 19 years, the mother of his child, and for the first time saw a stranger. Patricia, was any of it real? Our marriage, our family. Of course it was real, Patricia said tiredly. But real things still break, Richard. You should know that better than anyone. They arrested her quietly. No handcuffs. Richard's position and money afforded her that small dignity at least. But as she was led out, Patricia looked at Joy one last time. I'm sorry, she said. And for just a moment, she sounded like she meant it. Not for taking the money. I'd do that again. But for you. You didn't deserve this. Then she was gone. The police immediately began processing Joy's release and exoneration. Michael handled the paperwork while Richard stood by the window, staring out at nothing. Sir, Joy said softly. I'm sorry. Richard turned, surprised. You're sorry? Joy, we put you through hell. We should be. I'm sorry your family is hurting. I know how much that pain costs. Richard's eyes filled with tears. You're a better person than any of us deserve. My wife was right about one thing. You being in the right place at that day wasn't luck. It was a blessing. He pulled an envelope from his desk. I promised to sponsor your education. That promise stands. In fact, I want to do more. Full university sponsorship, accommodation, a stipend, and... He paused. A formal apology. Public. To clear your name completely. Joy took the envelope with shaking hands. Thank you, sir. But I think I need to find my own place to stay. Not because I don't trust you, but because I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own. I understand, Richard said. But please, let me help. You've earned it 100 times over. Daniel approached Joy hesitantly. I'm sorry I didn't find the evidence sooner. I should have trusted you from the beginning. You found it when it mattered, Joy said, pulling him into a hug. Thank you for believing in me. Friends? Daniel asked. Always, Joy promised. 6 months later, Joy sat in her first lecture at the University of Lagos, studying social work just like she'd dreamed. She lived in a modest but clean apartment near campus, paid for by Richard's sponsorship but chosen by her own taste. She'd learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom, as long as she stayed true to herself. Daniel visited Orphan, now in therapy and recovering from the trauma of his mother's betrayal. Patricia was serving a 5-year sentence for theft and fraud. Richard had filed for divorce, heartbroken but resolute. The story had made headlines for weeks. Billionaire's wife frames orphan who saved her son. But Joy tried not to read the articles. She knew the truth, and that was enough. Some nights, she still thought about the moment she'd jumped into the lagoon, how split-second decisions could change entire lives. She'd saved Daniel that day, but she'd also set in motion events that would nearly destroy her. But she'd survived. More than that, she'd learned that character wasn't defined by circumstances. It was defined by choices. Patricia had chosen greed and deception. Joy had chosen honesty and forgiveness. And in the end, those choices made all the difference. Joy's story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, when the world has turned against us and hope seems lost, truth has a way of rising to the surface. Like Joy, we all face trials that test not just our strength, but our character. And it's in those moments that we discover who we truly are. If this story touched your heart, if Joy's resilience inspired you, or if you simply believe that stories have the power to heal and transform us, subscribe to Folktales by Inaya and become part of a community that believes in the power of hope, the triumph of truth, and the beauty of the human spirit. Until next time, may you find the courage to be like Joy, honest in a dishonest world, kind in the face of cruelty, and unbroken by storms that were meant to destroy you.